I'm hurt. I don't understand. You have a chance to, one, draft for a weapon, and you don't take it. Two,
who's the weapon? For clarification,
Matthew Golden. He's here in Texas. Draft him.
It's not the sexiest pick, but it's a good pick. He replaces Martin right away. You're going to get a Pro Bowl offensive lineman in the future. Would I like McMillan better? Yes.
He's a right guard, and he's okay. He's not even that good.
I'm very surprised. I thought for sure, as soon as Tank came off the board, Matthew Golden's going to be in Dallas, but I guess not. Hey, but I'm happy with the pick. We need a lineman. Now that Zach Martin's gone, we need a new guard.
Number 2, Shedeur Sanders.
This team hasn't done anything in 30 years, so thanks a lot, Joneses, for giving us another bad draft.
We need weapons. When we went and got Amari Cooper, we look like something new. We need weapons!
Hello, it's the post-draft party for the One Star Cowboys podcast. I'm Kevin Turner. We have Saad Youssef, John Machota, Kent Garrison, all here as well as usual. Thank you so much for being here. Hope you had a good draft weekend. Let's start with let's just go in order here. Let's go to Thursday night first. Work in reverse. Night 1, it's all happening. Ted McMillan goes at 8 to the Carolina Panthers. Cowboys sitting there at 12. John, your observations on how all that went down and the Cowboys pick in general.
So after McMillan went, I told Saad I was going to go over to the Ford Center because I wanted to get fan reaction because I'm like, there's a chance that this could be bad, And if there's a large contingent of fans that were at AT&T Stadium, that the people booing topped the people that were cheering in 2014 when Zach Martin was taken over Johnny Manziel. And I'll never forget that. And it's hard. You can't find that. I think the Cowboys have completely scrubbed the entire internet of the video. But that was when they had the draft party at the stadium. And so there was a part of me thinking, okay, well, if this is like an offensive lineman or something, like fans are going to like lose their mind. But it's like, oh yeah, by the way, fans that are going to that draft event are probably pretty psyched for the team, regardless of whatever they do. They're happy to be at the event. So it wasn't that type of response like I was thinking. But yeah, Tyler Booker taking a guard, surprising a little bit just because, not that they took a guard, and it's not a Tyler Booker thing either. Just if you told me before the draft that was going to be their pick, I'd be like, oh, so they moved back to like 17 or something, And from, everything that's come out since, it sounds like Houston would have been in play. So you're talking like mid-20s. And it sounds like Steven wanted like a second and a fourth. Because when he went on the radio the next morning to talk about the pick, they kind of just threw out on 105 Through the Fan just a hypothetical of, what it would take, to move back and what you'd be looking for in that. And I want to make sure I got the exact quote that he said here. He said, let's see, what was that? Hold on. Got a lot of tweets here from the last couple of days. Sorry,
yeah,
guys.
I bet.
He said it was a hypothetical of having to move from 12 to 25. He goes, I think you need at least a second and a fourth, and probably more like a second and a late third. And so that was not happening. But to move back to 25, with that being said, I don't think there's any chance you get Booker. He would have been gone by 25, So that is something that is of note. They got the guy that they wanted. It's not, obviously, you can make the argument that guard is maybe the least sexy pick in football. But my thing that I'll say is that if it wasn't him, then who would you have wanted if I tell you can't trade out at 12 for best player available that was there? And so for me, I probably would have taken Emeka Egbuka, but he's the wide receiver version of Tyler Booker. Like he's the safe pick, like solid, whatever. So I would have won Egbuka, but what were your guys' thoughts? What would you have won at 12 if I told you absolutely cannot trade back?
Yeah, I think, first of all, the important thing to realize is Tyler Booker would not have been there in the trade back. And the best example of that is that Gray Zabel went at 18. And so, I mean, if the guard went at 18, Tyler Booker would not have been there. And then the other thing, real quick before I answer your question, John, is that I think when it comes to making a pick, whether it's a guard or whoever, the Cowboys said Jerry Jones said that there were 12 first-round grades. If you're trading back from 12, you're basically conceding that you're not going to pick a first-round grade player anymore in this draft because surely Cam Ward maybe was not a first round pick grade on them or whatever. So I'm not saying like they got the 12th of the 12. Maybe there were guys picked ahead that they didn't have first round grades on. But if you're moving back 6-7 spots, most likely you're not getting one of the 12 guys that you had a first round grade on, which, as Jerry said, Tyler Booker was one of those 12 that they had a first round grade on. So I think
before
that's
you go any
important.
further, though, I also have to add, so on that same interview where Steven talked about the trade back, he says 13 first round grades and then adds in some of them are still available. So this is after the first round was over. So when they're saying that stuff and just having covered the team a while, it's almost like they just say whatever is like the neat, nice thing that makes it sound great. You know what I'm saying? Like, I have never covered the team and they said that their first round pick was not a first round grade on their board. You know, they always say, yeah, well, this is our last first round pick, you know, so it's like, you got to kind of take it with whatever. But yeah, I could see him being still, even if let's say they had 10 first round grades, I could see Booker being the 12th guy on their board. That's not difficult to believe that.
Yeah, and in terms of who I would have picked, I mean, I know Walter Nolan was another guy that the Cowboys were really considering at that spot, and I think that, defensive tackle, but maybe there's some reservation with how they've gone with defensive tackle in the last few years. I'm going all the way back to Tristan Hill in the second round, to Mozzie and all that. But the guy that like I kind of started side-eyeing a little bit was Tyler Warren. And the reason was that most people thought Warren would be the first tight end off the board, but Colston Loveland went first. And I just wondered, if you don't get McMillan, Jake Ferguson is going into a contract year coming off of an underwhelming season. Do you draft someone like Warren and then you sell it as we upgraded our passing game and maybe our running game as a blocker or whatever, and you have your tight end of the future? So I kind of started to feel like that. I didn't hear anything from the Cowboys on that, but I started like putting those pieces together. But at the end of the day, I think it was Walter Nolan. Jalen Walker was another name, but yeah, after McMillan went off, I didn't really have a strong opinion on that.
One thing real quick, KT, before you go to that. You know, it's funny you say that though, Saad, because I was thinking about, when we're doing our full 7-round mocks leading up to the draft, I kept saying like, well, quarterback, safety, and tight end, they don't really need those or whatever. I still thought they'd draft at least one of those players somewhere. And to have 10 picks going in the draft, they do a trade up, so they end up with 9 picks. They don't draft anybody at any of those positions. And then I don't think that all of the names are out yet of the undrafted guys they've signed, but of the ones that are out, 2 tight ends, 2 or 3 safeties. So it was like, that's the only part, because to me, Tyler Warren is let's say you just have like a team where either expansion team where you have holes everywhere, or you're the best team in football where you're like, we really don't need anything. We just take the best player available. I agree with you. Tyler Warren, to me, was the best player that was available at 12, I felt like.
Yeah, and there's another name. We can throw them in a bunch of names. It's how they had their board stacked. It's what I keep coming back to. I feel like my overall, I know we're going to go chronological here. I just think their process was good, though. And I don't know that I felt like I've been able to poke holes in their process over the past few years. And I thought it was good. And look, I don't know if Jahdae Barron, I like him a lot. I don't know if they did. They probably weren't going to take a corner that small. And things like that. Those are players I might have liked more than Barron. But to me, and I understand the frustration of not getting what you call your wide receiver 2, I think something you said on our podcast 2 weeks ago, John, really stuck with me throughout this process when you said they might, if they don't get their guy, a guy they really like, they might look at their roster and say, we traded for Mingo. We have invested in Jalen Tolbert. We have these other guys. We have signed Kevontae Turpin. And they might think we've paid CeeDee Lamb the most money, So I think that's where that stuck with me, like leading up to the draft that week, on scenarios if they didn't get Tet. But to hear them say or, infer that they would have taken McMillan if he was there at 12, that made me really happy because I thought that's who it should have been. And to see what they've did, I was very happy with Booker. I liked Booker. I know a lot of people are going to say it's a reach and value and blah, blah, blah. Dude, he can play. And I get that offensive guard is boring, but boring is better than crappy. And sometimes when you're rolling the dice there, dude, this is a guy I think you're pretty safe with. And his athletic scores are not going to – you can poke holes in that if you want. there's some things that he does when he's moving around and he's pulling at Alabama. You watch it, you're like, okay, he moves fine. Like, we don't have to look at everything with how fast is this guy or how does he move in every drill. That stuff all matters, but this guy is kind of a badass. My only question is, like, you sure is he going to be comfortable at right guard because he played at left guard the whole time? Little something that tiny. Like, that's where I'm at. I like the pick, and I think whatever perceived value question that you might have there, they more than made up for it on Friday night.
Wait, KT, real quick, to go back to John's question, though, when they were on the clock and they hadn't picked Booker, who were you thinking at that spot?
Well, I was wondering if they liked Golden, and me, I thought 12 was too early for Golden, and he ended up going, early 20s? I'm going to pick 23 there. I thought that was too early for Golden. So it wasn't so much of like who
You just wanted him to go to the Packers. Just admit it.
Well, okay, once you get to 23, it's a different story there.
I got to be pretty honest about this, whether you like the Packers or not. When they made that pick, like how loud it was there, it was pretty badass. Cool. Like, especially the way that, I don't know who did their pick. I wasn't watching it live. Who
Murphy.
It? Oh, it was Mark Murphy? Yeah, when he said that, like, whatever, that we haven't done since whatever, 2000 or whatever, and everyone realized it was wide receiver, like, that was pretty badass. And when he said Matthew Golden, who clearly was the receiver that everybody wanted, that was a cool moment.
I definitely imagined Aaron Rodgers shaking his head somewhere.
Yeah.
Sure. All these years, you can give me one. The other thing I want to say about Tyler Booker.
Don't you think, real quick on that, though, don't you think that that's kind of what Mahomes is going through? Where when you're just so damn good, the talent, the people that are filling in the roster are like, we don't have to go crazy there at that position because he can carry that. And it's like, wait, but when I was killing it early in my career, we had this really good wide receiver or wide receivers in the Packers case, more of Tyreek Hill, whatever. But whereas, like, I just feel like with some of the roster building on some of these teams, when they have that real elite quarterback, they're like, no, we don't have to go that strong. I mean, let's be honest. I mean, bringing it back to the Cowboys, clearly they thought that for that one off season when they were like, no, it'll be fine. And Deontay Thompson and Hearns and Dak will be fine with this group. We'll be good. We got Cole Beasley. It'll be fine. And then you're like, okay, we got to get some receivers in here. Also, by the way, with McMillan thing, clearly if they're interested in him at 8 and everything they said throughout the draft, the process just this weekend, clearly number 2 wide receiver is still in their mind. It is not one of those, like, they can say Mingo, they can say Tolbert, they can say Turpin. Clearly they know that they need to add somebody. Now, it could probably be somebody that's more like a Brandon Cooks than it is somebody who's like a Tyreek Hill, but they need to add somebody, and they're aware of that. But sorry, go on. Cut you off.
No, 100%. But another thing, what Saad was kind of pointing out on the guards, like, we know that they had a little interest in Jonas Savannah, the Arizona guard. Yeah. I have trouble with his last name because it's real long.
Sounds good.
But, he goes 5, 6, 7 picks before their pick at 44 in round 2. And if you just pay attention to their visits, and I know there's a ton of visitors, and you can read into how much of that as you want, they didn't have any more guard visitors that would have been taken, that high in the draft, top 50 type guys. So it ended up working out really well for them, I think.
Okay, let me do one more hypothetical with you then.
Yeah.
I know that they take offensive linemen all the time in the first round, but they've actually taken a defensive lineman in the last 4 years in Mozzie Smith. But when they were thinking of Mozzie Smith, it was between Mozzie Smith and Matthew Bergeron. So the hypothetical is that they could be going for 4 offensive linemen in 4 straight first rounds. Obviously, that wouldn't have happened. I think Bergeron would be one of the guards. So in that hypothetical, you don't need a guard. Okay. Then what are you doing at 12? No, and you can't trade back.
What am I doing or what are they doing? This is where it gets tough.
Yeah, for them, I bet you it is like a Buka or Golden.
Yeah. No, yeah, because they have admitted, like you said, that's an area.
I mean, you just took a tackle and Tyler Guyton in the first round. Are you really taking another tackle? And was there a tackle there that you really loved? You know what I'm saying?
No.
Or maybe to Saad's point, then maybe that's where you go Walter Nolan then.
Yeah, Walter Nolan, and then you have your defensive tackle room is in there, and you've got 2-3 techniques, which doesn't matter. You can both play. So, but it's just. I don't know. I would be looking at cornerback more But it sounds like they probably didn't like Barron as much as everyone else, and you
Right.
saw the cornerbacks all slide.
I
Will
mean, heck,
Johnson
if it was
not
us, we can't Monday morning quarterback this. We got to call it the way that we see it in the moment. And in the moment, for what we knew, which obviously these teams know a lot more than we do, you can't rule out at 12 right there in that situation. We can't trade back that. We wouldn't have been talking about Will Johnson. Like, we can say Will Johnson now because he fell so far, but I mean, in that moment, he could have been a guy where you're like, all right, well, just take the best corner available. But to your point, yeah, they probably didn't like either of them close to as much as we thought.
Would they have pulled the trigger on Michigan's Kenneth Grant? I feel like there's a little bit of scarring.
I think Saad's on it. I think it would have been Walter Nolan.
Okay, yeah. I like that fine. I like what they did here. When I did have a complaint, and then I realized in time that Tyler Booker was actually very open-minded and looking for some cowboy boots. It kind of drives me nuts in this town, though. Paige Beckers gets drafted number 1 by the Dallas Wings in the WNBA, and they make her wear a cowboy hat for a photo shoot and all that stuff. And I'm like, hey, we don't have to force Yellowstone culture on everybody. Let these people choose if they want it or not. But it does turn out that Tyler Booker really did want some cowboy boots. So.
Well, and it is also Lucchese, which is a huge sponsor with the Cowboys. And they have one of the shops that are there at the Star. And so it was pretty detailed on everything that they had done. And obviously they were going to do it for whoever. It wasn't just Tyler Booker. It was something that was set up for whoever was their first round pick. So yeah, it was interesting.
Why does everyone force that on us though?
Well, to KT, I think with Paige, at least it's in like their home is in Arlington, which is down by Fort Worth, and that's where you're getting a little bit more of the rodeos and stuff like that. whereas with someone like Booker, who's gonna be in Frisco, that's where I'm like, okay, we don't need to force.
Is Dallas more cowboy hats, or do you bring the player in cowboy boots, or do you bring the player in and you allow him to pick from whatever type of facial injection or any type of plastic surgery they would like to have done?
Yeah, I mean, it's the old joke was the cocaine and boob job crowd, and things like that. But look at the World Cup poster. It's a guy in rodeo gear
cowboy.
kicking a ball. Like it's just.
I saw that.
But I did find out, and Tyler Booker sounds like he's going to be kind of fun personality guy and all that stuff.
100%.
Obviously, team captain, all that stuff. But it was, pretty much guy that he was pretty excited about the whole cowboy boot thing. So I just wanted to let that go. It's been a thing of mine for many years.
Him as a person and answering questions. I mean, that's only a small part of it, but I've never been around anybody that I thought was better than him. Maybe there's somebody that I'm not thinking of that was as good, but I've never been around a player that's been as good as him in the interview thing. And like I was telling Saad and some other people after we got him on Friday when he flew in from Green Bay, man, all I was thinking about was the combine process where you're doing those interviews with the teams. You got 15 minutes. I think it's like, it might be 18, but somewhere between 15, 20 minutes. And it's like one player after another. I'm like, hey, I don't know how you feel about the interview that Booker just did, but man, I feel bad for whoever had to follow him. Because if you're just some guy that was real quiet, you didn't have like detailed answers, man, you follow that guy, it's going to look real bad in there. Because he looks like that he was like, honestly, like, well, you have to have the body and build and athletic ability to make it to where he is, but it's like almost like he's been just set up for this his entire life, from the high school to go to IMG and then Alabama to the Dallas Cowboys. Like, this is not a just random, hey, I used to play basketball, I kind of got good at football, so I've been doing this for the last year. Like, no, this guy, this has been his process for quite a long time. And man, I don't know, like you mentioned, KT, the maybe a little bit of the lack of athleticism type part of it there. But outside of that, I don't know what box is there that he doesn't check.
Yeah, and during that introductory press conference when he's going through his pregame routine, I very much had that scene that John likes to reference from The Office where with Dwight, I'm like, are we looking at this? Like, you seeing what's happening over here? Like, this is crazy. Like,
and Schottenheimer had that like real cocky look on his face, like, see guys, this is why we took him, whatever, like that. You guys were criticizing us, whatever. See, like, it would be very just because, I mean, I've heard the stories of some guys that, not necessarily just with the Cowboys, but across the league, that their interviews are really, really, really bad. And it just, to see a guy that's like that good, and heck, we've seen a lot of them have surfaced where, heck, you just see it even with some of the John Gruden interviews with some of the quarterbacks and stuff like that he's done over the years. But like, man, I I don't think you could throw this kid a question that he would have been put in a tough spot. I mean, kind of like the way Dak is,
Yeah.
So, I mean, I do see when they talk about Dak, Tyler Smith, Tyler Booker now, like, I mean, they got a good nucleus of guys that I can see where the coaches feel pretty good behind the scenes, when they're not around, that they got the right type of people to kind of be leading the locker room,
Our KGs, right kind of guys.
There you go.
Keep them coming. Let's go to round 2. Donovan Ezaraku, Boston College, edge. Let's see, Dane Brugler had him as his 6th edge in the draft. A lot of good things you can say about him, and I certainly thought this was a guy who could have gone the end of round 1. So whatever value questions you had about Tyler Booker, let's just go ahead and call it even right now because you got pretty good value on Donovan Ezaraku at 44.
That's, I mean, one of the Lions' biggest needs is defensive end. And so, when Dane's, guide came out, I was looking at defensive ends, not thinking the Cowboys would take one early, but just I'm like, oh, okay, I wonder who will kind of be there 28. And I thought he would have been a great fit for the Lions at 28. And so when I saw him fall away to the Cowboys at 44, I'm like, that's phenomenal value. And here's the other part of it too, and I think this has to factor in, is that the Fowler deal is only 1 year. Sam Williams is in the final year of his rookie deal. Plus, he has not met the expectations up to this point. So it made a ton of sense to me.
Yeah, and on the Sam Williams front, it's also worth bringing up, like, he was drafted 2 regimes ago. Like, he was drafted by the Dan Quinn regime, and I know Marshawn Nealon was picked in the 2nd round last year, and by no means am I giving up on him or anything like that, but again, he was a Mike Zimmer pick, and I thought it was good for Eberflus to kind of get his guy and someone that he could put opposite of Micah, and to John's point, I mean, Sam Williams is coming back from a torn ACL, going into a contract year. Aside from the talent he's flashed, he's also flashed some tendency for some, head scratching, boneheaded plays. And I think when you're evaluating all that, I did a winners and losers piece that, depending on when you're listening to this, one of my losers was Sam Williams, because the margin for error for him is so slim now. I mean, he doesn't have the favoritism with the coaches. He is coming off of an injury and going into a contract year. I think this pick was good, not just for this year and for Eberflus, but also for the foreseeable future.
And then the other part I wanted to add on there too is just, you look at last year, even if they didn't absolutely need a defensive end, just look at the injuries that hit that position last year for them. I mean, Micah missed time, Lawrence missed time, Williams missed the whole season, Nealon missed time. Like, those are your top 4 edge rushers last year. So it's like, so you go into this season and you add Dante Fowler, but they're still like, the other part too that I always think that needs to be added in with a guy, when you have one of your edge rushers, Micah Parsons, you can still get 2 of these other guys out on the field with Micah, because you can move Micah to the inside, you can move Micah around and stuff like that. So it's not like it's going to only be one of these other guys and Micah because he's going to be on the field most of the time. No, you can find ways. Like, you would love to have the problem of, hey, none of these guys really got hurt, so we had all of them healthy all season. You would love that problem to deal with.
Yeah, and this is also a thing too, where whatever they were looking at on their board right there, where were Cowboys fans maybe thinking wide receiver? Well, Luther Burden goes 5 spots before that. If you wanted your running back there, Quinshon Judkins and Travion Henderson, they went before that. And this is the game we play. It seems like every year, where you're going, okay, well, maybe our guys on round 2 will fall to us, and then you get a little hope, and then 5, 6, 7 picks away, they all go. It happens all the time. Will Johnson, if they wanted to go there, might have been your other question, but outside of that, I wasn't sitting there going, okay, got to get your wide receiver here. Who are we reaching for? And I feel good about what they got.
Were you a Mike Green guy though? I thought
I did love Mike Green, but
obviously, there's more to that. Yeah,
when everyone passes on him once, you're like, okay. And then you see who takes him too, which to me is even more concerning, because the Ravens are the team and the Bengals occasionally, but the Ravens are the team like, the Chiefs as well. Like, we'll do that. We'll go ahead. And it's almost confirms the suspicions are at least worthy, even though he's not been found guilty on anything. To be fair. One of the things I also want to say, 3 years starting at Boston College, I kind of like that. Like, come in and go now. And I think we're going to get that with Donovan Ezaraku. So Nice work, Cowboys.
Before you get to the third round pick, which obviously most people listening to this are going to know it's a corner, I will say, if they don't get a corner that they really like that ended up being probably their best value of the draft in the third round, there could be a little Monday morning quarterbacking corner there. Just because, if you don't, let's say Will Johnson's there at that time, Benjamin Morrison, who if he's healthy, he's probably going higher than that. And then also the Trey Amos, who from Ole Miss, who ended up going to the Commanders at 61. Yeah. So if they got wiped out at corner and running back and wide receiver, that probably would have made it look a little bit worse. But anyway, go to the third round because obviously that covers that. So
I think it's just really good points because that's what this draft so often turns into. Us though, we think about these players and we go, okay, they could have gone here. Trey Amos, really good player, would have been happy with that. We got to round 3. I couldn't believe it. I thought he would have been gone in round 2. I know there's an ACL injury involved, but Siobhan Revel Jr. From East Carolina, pick 76. We all love this, right? I assume.
Yeah, I think when you look at their situation at cornerback, I mean, they needed somebody that can plug in and play. And, just on the injury front, he told us on a conference call that he's running straight line right now. Stephen Jones said that possibility of him starting on the PUP list, but should be good to go at some point during training camp. So he's fully expected to be greenlit by the start of the season, whereas that's not the case so much with Trayvon Diggs. There's some ambiguity there with Trayvon's availability for the start of the season. I think it's likely that he misses the start of the season, to be honest. So yeah, I think that was a position that they really needed just because they lost 2 guys, if you count Diggs' injury and Jordan Lewis. And they traded for Khair Elam, and that's fine. But at this point, Elam is nothing more than a lottery ticket, in my opinion. It could hit big. I'm not saying it can't, but you can't rely on that. So I thought that was just a good pick for a position that they also needed.
So that Saturday is kind of becomes kind of a grind when you're out there because you've gone through these first 2 days of being out there, and so you want to get right about these picks. Kind of beat you down a little bit because these are a bunch of guys that you really don't know that much about. A little bit, but I mean, they're day 3 guys, And so by the time you get to the post draft press conference with Jerry, Steven, whoever the head coach is at that time, lately they've been bringing Will too, you're kind of good with, let's knock this out in 20, 30 minutes and let's get out of here. So the reason I'm bringing this up is so the press conference yesterday after went 45 minutes. And so as those minutes are going by, it's easy to kind of be like, all right, I already got what I'm writing. I'm kind of tuning some stuff out. I'll worry about the rest of this later. And in probably the last 2 or 3 minutes, Jerry gave a pretty interesting answer about Trayvon Diggs. I want to share just because we're talking about the Diggs right now. So, there's been speculation about how he rehabbed his previous knee injury. And maybe if he came back too soon or he didn't do as much in his rehab as the team would have liked. And when Jerry was asked about Diggs last night, he goes, we have a good idea. He's working hard. That's very important because he'll be very good and diligent in his rehab process. Then we'll get him back quicker. And when he does get back, he'll be sounder. If he has not worked as hard, he is more subject to injury. He's learned that one time. I have a lot of hope that his actual rehab and experience from that time before is really helping him out. I think it is. And so when I hear that, it kind of confirms stuff that you had been hearing. But then the other part of it is I don't see them rushing him back too soon. And so when they sit there and talk about a potential of, could he be ready for the start of the season? I'm like, I don't think he'll be back for the first month of the season. I think right now I would pick him to be back a little bit before Overshown is, but I would not be looking at week 1. So as I see it, I do think that Revel will be. And so I look at him as one of your outside corners. I think Khair Elam could be the other one. And then maybe you allow Bland to be back into the slot there. And those are your starting 3 corners. And then your 4th guy up, Kalen Carson. And then when you get Diggs back, then you feel pretty good about the group that you have, obviously, if all the other guys are healthy. But, the thing with Siobhan Revel, is that he said he's running straight line, but he's not doing any cutting yet. That's the next step that he's at. He did have his knee surgery done by Dr. Cooper, who is one of the Cowboys team physicians. And so that gave them a lot of understanding of the procedure that he had and things like that. Because it's more than just an ACL tear. It was also a partial tear of another ligament. So it is a little bit more to it. But they seem pretty confident he'll be ready for week 1. So if that's the case, then I think you really got a bargain because he fits everything they want. The long corner, playmaker, all of that stuff. It seems like he checks all the boxes.
Yeah, you go back to other things. Again, wide receiver is always going to come up. I know that without having a 4th-round pick there, I kind of went after their guys that you could have taken there. Caleb Johnson. Well, we don't know if they like the running back, Caleb Johnson. We don't have a good feel on if they liked any of the wide receivers that went. I know they liked Tootin. They brought him in for a visit. He goes, 24 picks later. So, again, this felt like wonderful value. And that's the story of Friday for me is good value. And, again, process-oriented. Didn't reach for your guy. They had Ezraku on the board higher than Will Johnson, I would imagine, or at least he was a medical red flag or whatever you had there. Sticking to the board and all that stuff does matter, and it sounds generic, but I think that's important. And I don't know that they've always done that. You can just kind of get the feeling who knows? Maybe they did have Schoonmaker ranked that high, but that jumps out as an area where you go, well, that seemed a little early for him, things like that. And I don't mean to call him out as the specific example, but I just felt like the process was good, and I like that, and I was very happy. I think after 2 days, you're sitting there going, all right, well, this has gone pretty well.
Yeah, and real quick, KT, because before we move on to day 3, I think we all kind of know that after day 2, you're really not filling the number 2 receiver void. I mean, your best chance was day 1, maybe day 2, but you're not doing anything in day 3. So I want to say before you move on to day 3, and I wrote this as one of the losers in my winners losers piece on The Athletic, which is the Cowboys' approach to free agency, because the way that the Cowboys approach free agency in their entire player acquisition period, it makes a lot of people who maybe are maybe viewing things a little bit more emotionally and not thinking through everything logically to look at the Cowboys coming out of the draft and not think as highly of the draft because they're like, well, there's this big hole right here at wide receiver. How can we say that they had a great draft when there's such a gigantic hole? The Cowboys had too many holes to fill with 3 day 1, day 2 picks. There was no way. I mean, if they picked Ted McMillan in the first round, you would have felt a little iffy about their guard situation with TJ Bass and Brock Hoffman and the other 10 guards that they signed in free agency. But there were too many holes. And if they didn't get, and if they took Caleb Johnson in the 3rd round, you would have had major questions at cornerback.
Yeah.
The point that I'm making is they had a really good draft. And if you're viewing the draft in a vacuum in these 3 days, specifically the 2 that we've talked about so far, and we're about to get into day 3, they had a really good draft. All it does is reinforce the fact that you can have a really good draft, but you can't just completely sit out free agency because now, as John mentioned, they're back on the market, but you could have been on the market when you had a lot more options on the table for your number 2 receiver instead of trying to trade or sign, somebody in free agency who is available at this point. Their work overall in the player acquisition period shouldn't take away from how good of a draft they had. Look, we bashed them when they need when it calls for it. This draft was phenomenal. It was really great, at least on first day impressions. And I think sometimes everything that they do around it can take away from it a little bit.
I don't know this to be true, but I would say I bet you there's a good chance that they felt very strongly that, hey, we traded back last year, worked out great, we can do that again. Traded back in 2020, worked out great, we can do that again. There'll always be somebody there. And I bet you there weren't as many trade options they were thinking, because I bet they thought if McMillan's not there, we can move back a handful of spots, maybe still get Booker, but maybe that's where you take Egbuka. Maybe even they were a team that they got back to 25. Maybe they would have taken Luther Burden there, or maybe they take Matthew Golden. I mean, they brought all 4 of those top receivers in as 30 visitors. So clearly that was something in play. So The other thing I'll say, even through those first 2 days, like I saw you tweeting about it, KT, about how like you thought it was, you liked the direction it was going. Like, I understand there's a lot of projecting, but usually with the Cowboys, you know pretty early how these draft classes are going to be. Like, like literally, you look at their best draft classes, like 14 with Martin and DeMarcus Lawrence. You knew what, like, it wasn't really forcing anything. It was taking best player available. You knew it was heading the right direction. 16, okay, yeah, you took Zeke over Jalen Ramsey, whatever. But like, that's the draft they got, like Malik Collins and Anthony Brown and obviously Dakin and stuff like that. 2020 was another one like that. Hey, you need an edge rusher, but hey, CeeDee Lamb was there. And then in the second round, you get Diggs. 2021 was one that was interesting to me because that's the Micah draft. And Micah 100% was hey, we're just going to take the best player available. And he ends up being probably the most talented player on your team. But in the second round of that draft, they went back to the need thing. And they're like, well, we need a corner, though. We didn't get one in the first. And they take Calvin Joseph instead of, probably going in another direction. So it seems like when the board goes to where they just take the best player available, you know what? After the draft, it might leave you with some holes, but at least you're getting the best possible players. That's generally when this team is drafted its best. And that seems like what they did over the weekend.
Yeah, and real quick on the 2021 draft, even when they drafted Micah, there were a lot of questions about you're drafting an off-ball linebacker this high, whatever, and then Lawrence gets hurt early in that season, and all of a sudden you're switching Micah over to the role that he's in now. The point is, if you just stick to your board and draft best player available, you can figure things out from there. Like, you can figure it out where it's going to go as the situation presents itself in camp and during the season. But when you start picking a guy for a specific role, for a specific need, that's when you start getting into a dicey situation, because then if he fails or falters in that role, all of a sudden you don't really have anywhere else to put him because he wasn't the best talent. You only picked him to be that guy.
Yeah. Also, I'd say this too, and I'm not being preachy. I'm just saying this to Cowboys fans. I'm saying this as a Packers fan. I'll just be open here. Packers fan. Every team has holes too, so we always get concerned with what our team's holes are. You just have to remember, every team is dealing with the salary cap and trying to figure it out. And most teams come away from the draft going, "Well, we didn't get that done, and we meant to. We certainly meant to get that." Like that. Rarely is everyone like, "We're covered." So. Yeah, that's good.
Yeah,
I realized I wanted a wide receiver too as well. Trust me. Like, I really wanted that. But this is where we're at right now.
Do you think Philly had a lot of big needs?
Well, Philly's a little different right now. But you know what?
They're the only team, though. They'd be the only team that you could even say, though. Everyone else, though, I completely agree with you, does.
I'll start some shit. They need a quarterback. Let's go. Good luck without Kellen, my guy. Good luck. I didn't think they would find this level of juice in round 5. Jaden Blue, Texas. So very familiar. Look, if you're looking for a lightning guy right there, only concern, a little fumbly at times. But you talk about getting a player on the field who can score, like him and Turpin on the field at the same time. You've already made your offense way more dynamic than they were at any point last year. So I know it sounds crazy and people are like worried about the offense right now, but let's not act like having Zeke and Turpin on the field. Like, this is a big difference here. And
what if Schottenheimer finds a way that like they get the offensive line playing better than it has, and he even finds a way to get Deuce Vaughn involved to where he looks like the best Deuce Vaughn that we've seen. I'm not saying he's going to get like 5 carries a game or something, but like in certain games, there's a certain package or something where you're like, damn, remember they doing that before there? Just like same thing with Kevontae Turpin, where you're just like, maybe they use him in some ways where we're just like, oh, dang, that's, and I'm really saying it, not really even a knock against McCarthy or saying a positive about Schottenheimer, just there's a new play caller. You know what I'm saying? Like, there's going to be changes on the way, guys do things, So I don't think that'll happen. I think that Javonte Williams, Jaden Blue, maybe Miles Sanders, I think that'll be at the top of your depth chart, and they'll probably get the most of your carries. But
yeah, I think with Deuce Vaughn, it's a question of just even making the team right now, because you also got the guy Maffa,
yep.
Yeah, in the 6th round. So yeah, that'll be the first step for him. And I'm also, while we're talking running backs, I'm intrigued to see what happens with Hunter Lipke too, because that was a very Mike McCarthy player. So
yeah, that's interesting, because I assume Shotty kind of likes him. I've heard Shotty speak well of him, but he's not gonna just crap on any of his players. what you said about Deuce Vaughn makes me, I can't see Deuce Vaughn making the team. I want to say this about Brian Schottenheimer too. Like, I'm taking this to real life experience, but this might work. Whatever anyone thinks they know about Brian Schottenheimer, that's fine. There is a track record, and we can use that for a little bit of the equation. I'm going to just use being a producer on a radio show for many years. I've had ideas that I saved for myself for when I could one day host a radio show. Now, in the end, look, I still got fired from that job because the ratings were terrible on the show I was hosting. But does it mean like I was saving ideas and using them for when I was in charge? That type of thing. And I do think there's a little bit of that there in this league. I don't know how much. We'll see. But,
but also, using that as an example, though, too, KT, like for how long you've been in the business, there just have to be things that you did 5-10 years ago that you're like, yeah, I really liked that at the time, but I don't really like it anymore. Like it's kind of the way I do things has kind of changed. The people around me have kind of changed. That doesn't work as well as I thought it worked, 5-10 years ago in the radio business. So I'm sure even with the stuff that you saved just for yourself, there's got to be things that along the way that you're like, yeah, I probably wouldn't do that one either, even though it worked at that time.
Now, that's exactly how. And I think this is where you get this pick right here, and I don't know. We still have our starting running back. I don't know. Right? We'll figure all that out later. Now we got names. We have more names than we ever had last year going into the season.
Hey, did you like him the most out of the running backs that were available at that time? Or was there anybody you liked more than him?
At the time, let's see. We were 150, 149 there. 149.
Yep.
Okay, I didn't necessarily like DJ Giddens, but I wondered if they would because of the new coaching influence.
Yeah.
Right? No, I didn't like Jordan James more than Jaden Blue.
Ollie Gordon?
I didn't really like Ollie Gordon more than Blue. I didn't really like Devin Neal. No.
Devin Neal, yeah.
I can't say I did.
By the way...
Oh, go ahead. Go ahead, Saad.
Well, I'm just saying on the line of who we liked and running backs, just know Trevor Etienne will be used as the guy that we're always kind of comparing and stuff too, because that was the Mingo pick that the Panthers ended up using on Etienne. So I'm sure fans will, the same way that last year every time Bucky Irving did anything and we were quickly reminded that he was selected in the pick after the Trey Lance pick, I'm sure Cowboys fans will be watching Etienne closely.
I'm not some draft guru at all with any of this stuff. I go a lot off of just guys that I've seen, which is I'm not going to be really watching a lot of small college stuff. I would have said in that spot though, Saad, I probably would have liked Sampson though, still being there in the fourth. Dylan Sampson from Tennessee, more than Etienne. So even like if Sampson is to go off, I'm trying to think where he goes. Shit, hold on. No, Cleveland. That's a tough spot for us all. I don't know if that's a good one. But if he has, like you said, what's his name, Bucky Irving. If he performed like that, that'd be one in the back of my head that I'll always think about because I thought he would be a 3rd round pick.
Yeah, they took Sampson and Judkins. Cleveland did. They're
yeah, they took a lot of quarterbacks too.
Quarterbacks, quite a day for that franchise. Wow.
Also, just looking when we're talking running back, especially we see it in the last two years, the 4th round really seems to be like that sweet spot that NFL teams have figured out that this is where the run of running backs is going to be. Because I think there were like 6. I think when I counted in the 4th round this year, and it was 2 out of the first 3 out of the first 3 picks with Tootin and Scadaboo. So I think that's another thing.
When after the 3rd round was over, so Friday night, that press conference and so the 2nd and 3rd round, the way Will McClay jumped in on the answer about them not having drafted a running back, like I told Saad, I was like, I've never believed more now than ever that he is got to be the proponent of, guys, we're not spending top picks on running backs. Like we can find a running back later on in the draft, like. Especially and especially the way he talked about this year's class. Like he did not have a lot of interest in the whole idea of we got to get one in the first 3 rounds. Like now I say that, and in that 2nd round, maybe if Judkins is there or Travion Henderson, maybe it's a little bit different, but for what was available, I don't get a sense that was a difficult decision for them to go with a defensive end over taking whoever the next best running back was available. Like it very, like, and then here's the thing, like he says that Friday night, And then the fact that on Saturday, they then not only draft a running back, but they draft two, just further cements it that he felt very strongly that it's like, no, there's some really good depth in this draft at running back. We're going to get some guys. We'll be fine there,
Let me just say this too. We're going a little bit out of order, but let's talk about Phil Maffa, the Clemson running back they took in round 7 real quick while we're on the running back page. Like Jaden Blue was never the guy at Texas. He was always a part of a committee used in the passing game. He was your, quote unquote lightning. And then to get Phil Maffa, I think Phil Maffa goes way earlier in the draft. Not way earlier, but I think he goes earlier in the draft than round 7 if his shoulders weren't jacked up. He was playing hurt last year down the stretch, which was very crazy. But there's your Thunder. I mean, this is a 235-pound dude, and you're sitting there going, okay, so we have Javonte Williams and Miles Sanders here, and whatever you want to say about Deuce Vaughn, but I feel good about just Maffa and Jaden Blue, and we'll see what happens.
So you talk about Maffa
love
being
that.
Right, no, but so you talked about Blue having been in a committee, so he'll be used to that. So was Maffa up until last year. Because he even mentioned on the conference call how this role could be similar to what he had the year before, where it was that Will Shipley was the other running back at Clemson.
Yes.
And so that
Eagles.
year, Maffa carried 179 times, Shipley 167. So, I mean, it was almost a 50-50 split. And Maffa was the guy, though, that he had 13 rushing touchdowns to Shipley's 5. So, obviously, he was the short yardage. He would be the guy that that you're going to count on scoring. And also, by the way, I mean, Kate Klubnik ran 125 times too. So, I mean, it's not like he doesn't know how this is either. It's not like he's always been the feature back. But again, heck, if they took one of the Ohio State kids, you could say that too, because obviously they shared time this year. But no, I think that they'll be able to be fine with the role. The only reason I'm bringing this up, because when you said it, the thing I thought about was you hear so much, and heck, even Rico Dowdle talked about last year how there's a lot of running backs that are just like, I don't like operating and only getting like 10, 11 carries. Like, I got to get in a rhythm, and I need more carries before, like, for me to start clicking and playing my best. Where obviously these guys are going to be ones that they're used to. They're not the 20 carry a game guy.
Yeah. And how many of those guys exist anymore?
Well, that's true.
Right. And also with Maffa, I think the Cowboys, they kind of like, I'm not saying there's like a extensive track record or pattern here, but I remember when they picked Bo Scarborough in like the 7th round a few years ago, like they picked that big banger running back in the late rounds where, they're not similar players or anything like completely the same, but I'm just saying like, somebody that serves a role and can play that short yardage, whatever. I still think if you're coming out of this draft and looking at the running back outlook of the Cowboys, it's Jaden Blue. Like that's the guy. But I think Phil Maffa is a good plus in that as well.
Hold on. Real quick though, KT, you said, but who does that anymore? There's a gentleman by the name of Cam Scadaboo that does that you could have had at some point. How do you feel about that?
I loved that the Giants got him. He's going to injure so many of their practice guys. I mean, that guy is most likely to knock over a table. He's just, come on, man. What do we? Y'all can have fun with Scadaboo for a couple years, but let's get real here. That guy is trouble.
Where would you have been interested? Even undrafted, or still not then?
No, like, around 6 or 7.
Okay.
Yeah, for me. But, I know the golf cart story. You guys know that, right?
I don't think I do.
No, look into it. I don't want to get any of my details completely wrong. It's as good to refresh on.
Okay.
This guy will get his friends hurt. Just put it that way.
Oh, okay. Well.
Scadaboo. Have fun, Cam. Enjoy your time in New York. Shamar James, the team captain selection here, a bit of a theme as well up there at Florida. I will be completely honest, didn't know a ton about Shamar James, pick 152 in round 5 there. Feels like special teams. It feels like we always take a linebacker, so maybe they really like him.
Yeah, I mean, the trade up for him, which I like because that eliminated another later round pick that we didn't have to do a conference call on. So yeah, no, I would think that maybe they don't make this move if Overshown's completely healthy. The trade up move, I should say, for a linebacker where they probably feel like they need somebody that can give them some depth right away. I mean, I think they feel pretty confident they can count on Leah Fowl and Kenneth Murray and Jack Sanborn, but they probably want a little bit more. But to your point, yeah, special teams for sure.
Rangy, fast, that type of stuff. There you go.
So you asked him about special teams, right?
Yeah, I did. Yeah, and he said that's something that he embraces, and I do think it's going to be a special teams role to begin with. But it's again new defensive coordinator. Who knows if it's just again something that you want in your image and you want to be able to mold that guy. But I don't think. I think with Leafau and Overshown, you already have two good young linebackers that are kind of be your core.
Johnny Cornelius. We have a 2-year starter at Rhode Island, 2-year starter at Oregon, playing right tackle. This might be throw him into the mix of guys who, depth offensive line, needed a tackle. I have no problem with taking a big tackle who's got college experience right there. We're in the traits portion of the draft. Although I like to consider it more than traits. I think it's traits and experience portion of the draft, too, if you want to go that way. Because I don't know that Cornelius has any traits that are just going to, blow you away. So right there, something that's good to have. And look, that's the question. Your biggest questions on your team, on your offensive line right now, are your tackles. You hope. I mean, you certainly hope that's the case. But that's where we are. So Johnny Cornelius.
And then you kind of feel like eventually you're going to hit on one of these guys.
Probably not.
The late round Nathan Thomas, Awesome Richards, Matt Waletzko. It's not like they haven't tried on trying to find some depth in the offensive line later in the draft. So you'd think that the odds would be in their favor that finally one of these guys are going to hit. You'd think, right?
Yeah, I mean Josh Ball, Farniok,
oh no, Farniok,
yeah, just
forgot him.
just go on down the line, but yeah, And I'm not. I don't think I have a full draft report on this guy or anything like that. But there's some guard tackle flexibility, which I think is good for them as well. But yeah, it's just a shot in the dark.
Jay Toya, DT, UCLA. This is your big one technique guy. 341 pounds, 3-year starter like that at UCLA. Team captain again. Just a common theme you're going to see throughout this draft. A lot of team captains. I love it. You should do this every year. I think you should take a lottery ticket on your 340-pound guy who can eat double teams and hopefully help stop the run. So
he was my favorite guy that we talked to on day 3, Saad. I just liked the way that he just seemed very selfless because, obviously guard is a pretty selfless spot. It's not like you have a lot of highlights and things like that, but I really think that kind of that run stuffing, one technique defensive tackle is such a thankless job. You're doing so much stuff, taking on double teams and stuff like that for other people. And the way he seemed like he was just so cool with that he didn't really care about the spotlight. And then watching his draft call and things like that, just seems like he's such a locked in guy. And then also just the fact that he's 6'2", 350 pounds, so that's another one, man. It kind of goes with the last pick that I saw about. You think that finally they'll hit on one of these defensive tackles. Where's that next Jay Ratliff coming from in the 7th round? So maybe this is the one. Maybe this is where he hits. But there's a very good chance. For him being a 7th round pick, I feel pretty confident he's going to make the team.
Yeah, bummer they didn't take a flyer on Desmond Watson, the Florida defensive tackle.
465 pounds, fun time.
Well,
that's what they say. You can't have your backup nose tackle, getting all the attention in the locker room. It's same thing with backup quarterbacks, right? Tommy Aking. Okay, I'm going to try this again. Aking Basote.
Yeah, that sounds right.
Aking Basote.
The Basote part's definitely right.
This is more 3 technique guy. The 306. Played at Maryland. Started all the games last year. Shrine Bowl guy. Not gonna act like I know a lot about him. So hopefully he works out.
Former basketball player that realized that at some point that there's probably more money for him to be made playing football than being 6'4", 300 pounds. There's not a lot
smart.
Of yeah, right.
Yeah,
there you
good
go.
Football IQ. Add that to the note card.
There you go.
All right. So overall, how you guys feel?
I was thinking about this. I give it a B+, A-. What grade do you guys give it? And what do you think's the worst grade that even, let's say, the harshest critic could give this draft?
Yeah, I was right there in the A minus, and I know you can't really grade a draft, and blah blah blah, all that stuff. But like we're here when this is our job. This is what we do. So, I would give it an A minus. I think at worst you can't give it any worse than a C plus. I think it just depends on if you valued the skill position and you're not as much of a football nerd and you're just kind of looking for flash and name, you didn't get a big running back and you didn't get a big receiver. And I think that's the only reason I could see that fan dragging it down to a C, C plus, because they didn't get the flash names at either of those positions.
And I would, this is a great running back draft and deep and all that stuff. But outside of Genty, I'm not convinced that there is that other, like, the running back, the one running back. Because that, again, it's a dying breed right now. You have Saquon, you have Derrick Henry, maybe Bijan's still in that boat, but Lord knows they'll find a way to get their other running back some carries over there in Atlanta. Like, I don't know how, like, if you really wanted a big name running back, like, okay, you wanted Genty, what else? Like, I don't know that Omarion Hampton is just the guy. They'll have other dudes getting carries. And that's where I kind of like, now the wide receiver 2 thing is concerning. You've got Dak. Obviously the offense has run through CeeDee Lamb for all these years, and you haven't quite gotten over any type of hump, but we could say that about many years going past. I think when you look at overall, not the only thing you're asking, it's the only thing you want. So we have to get an improvement at wide receiver 2. And I don't know if you're going to get it this year. And this is where the all-in stuff comes back and all this stuff that drives us nuts. Well, maybe that wide receiver 2 is next year. And maybe you do try to make a savvy veteran trade. And you can throw out all the names that get rehashed all the time. I don't think they're just going to ignore what's going on there at wide receiver 2. I think they know. I think that the fact that McMillan was that high on their board, they know. So to me, it's more about new coach. How's this going to go? Process. Was it good? After a couple years where I think the process has been a little off. So that's where I kind of end up walking away going, and a part of it's luck too, because you don't know what other teams you're going to take. So that's another thing. But I think to me, the process seemed to be good, best player, and building something. And I know that drives people nuts when there's urgency in this sport at all times, especially when a division rival is winning the Super Bowl and you're sitting here and just kind of in this hamster wheel. But you do have to give a guy a chance. And I think there's a lot of Cowboys fans who, if Luka Doncic didn't get traded, would have spent a lot more time over the last 2 or 3 months bitching about Brian Schottenheimer. And they kind of haven't, because there's been other stuff going on in our world. But lockdown of the Cowboys, I do think Brian Schottenheimer does deserve some leeway and does deserve a shot. No, it's not the guy I would have picked. But let's just kind of start from scratch and start here and now move forward. And that's where I felt like everything was kind of good over the weekend.
Yeah, KT, I'm really glad you brought that up, because that, I said I did the winners and losers piece. My first winner was Brian Schottenheimer. And the reason why was because of 2 things. Number one, I know we look at Cowboys ownership and front office as pretty like meddling and things like that, but they historically have always given their coaches a seat at the table when it comes to the draft and do that. And you can see Schottenheimer's fingerprints on a lot of these draft picks, especially the first 2 being in the trenches, all that kind of stuff. The second thing is, to your point, I think, we had the Schottenheimer press conference, then he met with us once at the podium, then at the combine, and once at owners' meetings. Other than that, it's been a lot of here and there. We talked to him 4 press conferences in 3 days during the draft, the 3 post-night ones, and then the Tyler Booker one, and then the pre-draft press conference on Tuesday. So 5 press conferences for Schottenheimer this past week that we talked to him. And it's just impressive. Like, he does seem like the guy that will, kind of like what John was saying about how you can see how Tyler Booker would win you over. I can see how Brian Schottenheimer would win people over just by talking. And I'm not just talking like the way he talks ball, because it's clear he knows ball and he can talk the X's and O's. But I'm talking little things like multiple times going out of your way to mention the scouts who are not at the podium and saying like, look, this could not happen without them, and just really spotlighting them and things like that. At the end of the day, He's got to win football games. That's what it comes down to. He hasn't had the opportunity to do that yet. In terms of everything that he has had the opportunity to do, which is run a draft, which is speak about it, which is talk about his plans and what he wants to do, I thought that was honestly one of my biggest winners throughout the whole draft process was this whole week of Brian Schottenheimer.
Well, is there anything else on your mind? I agree with all that, by the way. It's like you never know. I think the Cowboys fans are cynical by nature at this point because it has been a long time since clearly 30 years since you had been to a championship game. I understand all that. And we all have social media, so we see you and we hear you.
I think Kent had one thing he said.
Oh, hit us, Kent.
Yeah, just wanted to ask you guys about the story of the draft being what Cleveland did at quarterback, taking Gabriel and Shedeur. And also, John, I was listening to the post-draft press conference, I think it was night 2, and the way Jerry talked about Shedeur, I wondered your reaction to that because he was talking about him like, I was like, he's still on the board, right? He was talking about him like he had been picked and this was a done deal. And it was just a funny, the way Jerry was pumping him up.
Yeah, he kind of did the same thing. I don't know if it was last draft. Yeah, last one with Jonathan Brooks, the running back from Texas, when he was still on the board after the first round. And in both cases, I didn't think that they were going to take either player. I was just very confident that when Jerry was saying all that stuff, it was like, I don't think how many times Jerry has said, going back to the owners meeting about a month ago in Florida, how much he keeps pointing to, we got the highest paid player in the game. Clearly he's not looking for another investment at quarterback. I was really surprised that Shedeur would go to the 5th, obviously. I thought there was a possibility he'd go late first, but I was surprised he was there in the 2nd. Obviously surprised he was there in the 3rd, but I even thought, okay, start of day 3, somebody will take him. And for him to fall all the way there to the 5th, stunning. And the other thing that kind of sucks for him is that he's not going to a great situation. If he ends up being a guy that falls and now all of a sudden he's like, let me just give you a hypothetical. He obviously isn't going to be Patrick Mahomes' backup, but let's say the Chiefs are the ones that drafted him and now he gets to work with Mahomes and Andy Reid and all this stuff. You're just kind of like, I know this sucks for him right now, but man, this could end up being the best thing for him or something like that. No, he's going to Cleveland with a loaded running back. Loaded quarterback room. None of which do I think are really the ones that are really like there to take him under his wing. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
I guess maybe Flacco. I don't know.
Yeah.
Flacco is there. Is that correct?
Flacco, Pickett,
I feel
Sean Watson.
The reason I'm asking is because I feel like their quarterback room is that Miami Dolphins, Cleveland Browns pictures that you've seen where it's the person that it's either all of the jerseys of quarterbacks that they've had or it's the tape being put over the back of the jersey for a new name, like all the way, one after another. They just can't find their quarterback. That's their entire quarterback room right now. So not a great situation for him. But yeah, that's stunning to me.
And Dylan Gabriel, by the way, who they picked earlier in the draft.
That's just crazy.
Saad, you want to talk about the GoFundMe?
Yeah, I mean, look, I didn't see him sliding as far as he did either. It was just, to act like it was just the most abhorrent thing that he did. I don't know that I would go that far. I mean, we talk about Tyler Booker and the draft process and the interviews and stuff. I mean, there were teams that Shedeur chose to blow off and not talk to and, things like that. And I think, again, I wouldn't have waited until the 5th round to pick him, but I don't think it's the world's greatest atrocity that had happened. Honestly, the only thing that I feel really bad about for Shedeur is that phone call, the prank call. Even if you don't like the guy or whatever, or don't like the family situation, whatever the thing is, I don't know that I'd go that far on something like that. I know I wouldn't, to be clear. I think that's the only thing that I felt bad about Shedeur. Yeah.
I can't rule myself out of never doing that in my life. I mean, I wouldn't do it in the last 15, 20 years of my life, but I think there's a part in my life somewhere where I would have been, even if I wasn't making the call, I would have been in the room laughing. But the older you get, the more you're just like, that's messed up to ruin someone's moment like that. There's
happened to Baker too,
Yeah, there's nothing about him that makes me dislike him, like where I want to see him get a bad
I agree.
situation or to have like a suffering like this where he has fall. But there was, like, I agree with Saad, there was like a level of it like throughout the draft where I'm just like, that's why I said to him, do you want to talk about the GoFundMe? And I joked with Saad about like, what if we started a GoFundMe right now for a Shador? Like, how much money would get into that? Like, if we're just like, hey man, this is so messed up what they're doing to Shador. We just started a GoFundMe. Like, and if it took off, like it was like going viral, like, can you just imagine like it raised all this money? Like, we need it. It's like, he doesn't, the money, he's good on the money, guys. We don't need it. We don't need to start a GoFundMe. We're good.
Yeah. Real quick, Ken, you mentioned stories of the draft, and that being the top one. I think no doubt that is, but I think the one that stood out to me the most of this entire draft, on a more somber note, was the Derek Harmon story in Pittsburgh. That was wild, man. What a wild situation for that kid, and that was something that when you talk about top stories of the draft, I know Shador was the biggest one and the biggest headlines, but I think overall, if I'm not thinking any team or anything, I think that's the one that stood out the most to me, and kind of had a hard time shaking that one just because that's a brutal situation for what he had to go through there.
Another story I wanted to mention is Siobhan Revelle. If you haven't looked into his backstory, incredible journey here to the Dallas Cowboys. Going JUCO route, the COVID cancellation season. He's working at a overnight Amazon warehouse. He drives at 4 a.m. to go try out at East Carolina. I mean, it's amazing the fact that he's gotten here. So, yeah, wanted to highlight that too.
Cowboys seem like they've gotten a guy who's gone through a lot of adversity. So, yeah.
Can I say one thing about Deion and Shador real quick? Someone was doing the whole thing like, well, no one was, laughing when, Archie Manning did this for Eli and all this stuff. The thing is, like, you have to know this about Deion. Deion was a guy who was also on a talk show 3 months ago, daytime talk show, saying that he would intervene and he would not allow his son to play for a couple of teams. And I was like, in my head, like, man, the Browns have got to be one of those franchises, right? The Browns have got to be. Like, who else is the other? Like, that's like one of the worst run franchises ever. So it's like, that was funny to me. Also, Deion is a grudge holder. Like, ask anybody who's known him, played with him. Dude, he's a grudge holder. So you have this situation where the Steelers or the Jets are a couple of teams who made sense, to where you go, the Giants too. But the Steelers, oh, man, that does not feel like they want to. And then I look at the depth chart and go, Jesus, Mason Rudolph and Skylar Thompson are their quarterbacks. They're getting Aaron Rodgers. That's what's happening. And you know what? Having Aaron Rodgers and Shador Sanders in a Mike Tomlin locker room, that seems crazy to me. I know Antonio Brown was there for a long time. That sounds crazy. And that's where it got to a point where your backup quarterback can't be getting more attention than the rest of the team. And this is part of the Kaepernick thing. Believe it or not, it's a small part of the Kaepernick thing. And I just, there was a point where I was like, Jesus, he might not get picked because you're not going to want the noise. And I think he should have been picked in the top 100. I would have picked him. Hell, if
he went to the Browns, who are supposed to still trade for Dak. So I mean,
okay, come on.
I mean, do we all forget about this? This is a longtime radio guy in Cleveland.
Shame on anyone who retweeted that. Shame on anyone who retweeted that.
Well, KT, real quick, you're talking about Pittsburgh. The one that I was mentioning to John, like, Tom Brady has kind of become the mentee or whatever to Shador and things like that. The Raiders passed on him 7 times. And who do they have rolling out at quarterback?
Just Geno. That's it.
And
I just like when you say that. I always like to just picture like the behind the scene conversation where it's like just this random, like walking by in the hall and Tom Brady walks by Mark Davis and Mark Davis is like, hey, spent a lot of time with Shador, huh? You think that maybe? Absolutely not. And then just keeps walking.
We're not doing that.
Because I know they traded for Geno and I know they gave him an extension. I get it. But if you felt that highly about a guy, a young guy over, and we saw the Falcons do it last year in the first round, you don't think they would have done that in the 4th round if Brady had that connection with him and it was somebody that you're just going to kind of have in there. So there were a lot of teams, a lot of teams that passed on him that raised that eyebrow.
Well, how does Miami not make sense?
Right.
Miami made sense. Indianapolis made sense. I know they got Daniel Jones in there to back up Anthony Richardson. Seattle made sense until they drafted Milroe. And then you just run – at some point you do run out of teams. I was sitting there going, though, like it happens so much. You're like, okay, if you're the Titans, I mean, you had the number one pick. You might as well just let's lottery ticket this thing again, and one of these guys will work out. The Giants, one of these guys will work out. And I know it doesn't make sense in a world where you have signed Russell Wilson and Jameis Winston, but that doesn't make sense because you're going to win too many games with those guys to tank and get what you want there. Although I don't believe in tanking in football or whatever, but just kind of the thing is, he must have had the worst interview ever.
Tanking in football? What are the Saints doing?
Well, I don't believe in. I don't believe it's possible to organize it as well as you can in basketball or something.
No, you take Tyler Shuck there when they did, and
I kind of like Tyler Shuck.
All right, we'll see how this works out.
Tyler Shuck, if he doesn't break his leg and have 2 collarbone injuries, he's not in college until he's 26. Okay. Like he's bad luck guy. I don't think the Saints will be good. Trust me. But I was also thinking this has to be the worst interview ever. He must have gone in there because this is the script. I'm going to go in there. I'm going to be big time leader, and I'm going to win them over with who I am, and I'm going to tell them that they're a fool if they don't draft me. And that's the script that we're sticking to every time. And then every NFL team basically did what they did to Belichick. Like, we don't want you, dude. You are annoying to us. We don't want you. And I think that's what might have happened. Or he did what happened in Step Brothers, where
I would say this. It could be the worst interview for quarterbacks. It can't be ever.
Quarterbacks.
Because there's things that I've heard that have been reported about like how his interviews went, that if he's a corner, people aren't going to make him fall that far. They're like, yeah, that's fine. But when you're the quarterback and you're a guy that, you believe that you're going to be a franchise quarterback, like it's judged differently. I mean, it just is. Obviously, they also get paid differently too, so there is that comes with it. But like the quarterback side of it, they want more from you if you're going to be a quarterback. It's not just like it's the whole like, well, we just don't need you to know about your job. That's great, you should and be good at your job, but we need you to know about everybody's job, and we need you to be more than just a good player. We need you to be a leader. We need you to be doing the stuff behind the scenes. Like so much more comes with it. So I would judge that it may be amongst the quarterback interviews, but if you talk about the rest of the NFL, like I don't think he's even he's not anywhere near the top.
Yeah,
and KT, I'm glad you brought up Belichick because that's a good comp. Because it's not always just about also what you do primarily. Like Bill Belichick is the coach, but it's like, okay, do you want the whole package? Like now he's going to be the GM. He's going to be making picks, everything that comes with it that is unavoidable. And with Shador, for better or worse, I'm not saying it's all his fault, but Dion is with it. Like Dion comes with the package, and that is something that Dion and Shador have both established over the last few months, years, whatever. And I could see some teams just being like, yeah, we just don't want to deal. And John and I were talking about this in the media room. There's a scale, there's a line of how much you're going to tolerate and how much talent. And if you don't fit that much talent with that much nonsense, and KT, I think you're a How I Met Your Mother fan, right?
Sure.
And there's that crazy scale, the thing. And it's just like the crazy to pretty, crazy to hot or whatever it was for a girlfriend. I mean, if you don't check off on that graph, then you're just not going to be worth it to a lot of teams.
It's a little different than the Hillary Swank chart on The Office. But yes. No, I'm with you. And like the math, like certain teams need to address this position. Certain teams which just won't do this. Okay. And then it's like, okay, well then why didn't I get picked? He should have been picked though, because here's the thing. He's not bad. Okay. Now he ain't great. I don't think he should have been a top 10 pick or whatever, but he's not bad. And that's where I kind of wonder, like, God, how bad must it have been? So there you go. There's your story. Sure more will come out. Sucks that he got pranked. That's BS. Cowboys did good. Good job. All right. You got a little draft going. We'll talk to you next time on the One Star Cowboys podcast. Please give us a 5-star rating because our name's the 1 star. Give us 5 stars, though. We'd like that. Share it with people. That's wonderful when you do that. We really appreciate it. You can also join our Discord server as well. We have some live game chats and things like that, Q&A, stuff like that. It's always fun. For Kent Garrison of the Mad About Movies podcast, John Machota, Kent Garrison, I'm Kevin Turner. We'll see you next time on the One Star Cowboys podcast.